Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. We're here to help you live a longer and healthier life. Very important that we can all do something about our nutrition and exercise and stress management. And we start with a study from National University in Singapore. And they're looking at mushrooms, a compound mushroom, and it can predict cognitive function. According to the study, findings from that whole group of researchers looked at antioxidants and revealed an association between lower plasma levels of what is called ET, and that's a compound that occurs in mushrooms, and an increased risk of cognitive impairment and dementia. So the more mushrooms you have, and all mushrooms have healing capacities, especially when they're heated, like stir-fried, or put into a soup rather than raw, then it liberates their healing nutrients. And these healing nutrients are very good for the brain, and that helps prevent the slow but ever-developing cognitive problems. So, quite simply, after they looked at MRIs, scans of people before and after beginning to use mushrooms, they found that their cerebrovascular conditions like atrophy and etc. were less. So the more mushrooms you consume, the healthier it is for your brain and improving your chances of diminishing dementia. It's that simple. Now, mushrooms have a lot of other properties too that can help with cancer prevention, but this is something new. Also from the University of Hong Kong comes a study on acupressure. That's where you push into a particular meridian, into an acupuncture energy point. And they compared that to acupuncture, where you actually insert a needle, and to see if one is better than the other at treating sleep disturbances, especially in patients with cancer. Both acupressure and acupuncture, which is invasive, involves inserting needles, and acupressure, which is non-invasive and involves just putting pressure on a particular place, both help reduce sleep disturbances in patients with cancer. And that's important. And this was published in Worldviews on evidence-based nursing. And it was a randomized, in fact, they looked at 24 randomized controlled trials with thousands of patients, and that's what they found. So if you have a problem with sleeping, or you have a problem with sleeping and you have a disease like neuropathy or cancer, why not go up and get a chart that shows you the acupressure points? Now, you're not going to give yourself acupuncture, but you can certainly give yourself acupressure, or your partner or someone can give you acupressure. And you just hold like the thumb, you just hold it on an acupuncture point with moderate, not severe pressure for about 60 seconds. And that releases energy into the body. It helps. Next up, extroversion, conscientiousness, is linked to immune system function. University of Nottingham. What it means in lay language is simple. Researchers have long suggested that personality may influence health. Now, a new study suggests that certain personality traits may play a role in immune system function. A research team led by Professor Bahara of the School of Medicine at the University of Nottingham in the United Kingdom found that extroverts, type A personalities, very outgoing, very vivacious, very engaging, and you're born with that quality. Well, those individuals who exert that are more likely to have a stronger immune system, while people who are conscientious tend to have a weaker immune system. Interesting, isn't it? Now, to reach their findings published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology, they got healthy adults, 86 females and 35 males, between 18 and 59, and they were required to complete a test that measured 5 primary dimensions of personality: extroversion, neuroticism, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. The participants also provided blood samples, and the researchers used a microarray technology to assess the link between the 5 personality traits and the activity of genes in white blood cells that play a role in your immune system. In addition, the researchers took note of participants' exercise, smoking, drinking behaviors that could rule these out as contributing factors. Now, the results of the analysis revealed that participants who scored higher for extroversion, that outgoing personality, people who tend to raise their hand and speak out in class, a personality that is more assertive, talkative, and enthusiastic. By the way, those are people who generally end up in sales or marketing or public relations, had increased expression of pro-inflammatory genes in white blood cells, while those who scored higher on conscientiousness had reduced expression of those genes. So here's what they said. Individuals who we would expect to be exposed to more infections as a result of their socially oriented nature, meaning extroverts, appear to have immune systems that we would expect could deal effectively with infection, while individuals who may be less exposed to infection because they're cautious, conscientious dispositions have immune systems that may respond less well. So what's this mean? Because you have to look at everything else in a person's life. Mind you, they excluded the people who smoked and drank and their exercise status, nutrition, etc. And this was published in Medical News today. I'll try to put this into a simple lay language concept. The person that gets up in the morning says, yeah, I'm going to go exercise. But it's raining out. So what? I'll wear a rain jacket and a hat. Versus the person, no, looking outside. No, not today. The person that is more likely to take a risk. Versus the person who weighs everything says, no, I'm not going to take that risk. The person that's willing to take the risks and to go for it is a person who's going to have a better ability to deal with infections, a stronger immune system. A person that's always cautious about everything is less likely to have a strong immune system. That's what it shows. An interesting study from both the University of York and Newcastle University, both in the United Kingdom, kind of goes against what a lot of us have mistakenly and collectively believed, that the older you are, the more constricted you want your life to be, a smaller life, a simpler life, a slower life, uncomplicated, take no risks, and just live out your life. In fact, a lot of people believe that once they go into retirement, they're not supposed to have any responsibilities on any level, and outside of just taking care of themselves, because they no longer feel, not all, but a majority, that they can do anything to contribute to the larger public good. So you almost never see a group of senior citizens out demonstrating against social issues. For example, have you seen any group in the United States go out and do a demonstration against the unnecessary genocidal war in Yemen that we participate in? No. Well, how about when all the homes were being foreclosed on? No. How about all the corruption and all the different campaigns and the promises and the complete capturing of the social media platforms so they can censor anyone who criticizes them? No. Now, if it's something involving their pensions or Social Security, yes, then no voice. And I'm down here in Southwest Florida, but you not only have a mecca of gated communities here, I believe, I could be wrong, there's over 100 gated communities. One of these gated communities has over 3,000 homes in it. I mean, these are huge. And golf courses and tennis, and that's their life. Generally, these people tend to be financially conservative. They don't like debt. They generally have large savings, more than the average person. They are aware of what's happening because they were a part of it. But now they've kind of taken a step back and said, well, let the younger generation of those that came after me take care of these issues. Well, good luck with that. We don't see anything being done by the younger people. In fact, there's a clip from Bill Maher on this very issue. I think it's worth watching. And it kind of tells us the story of the younger people who made Greta Thunberg a worldwide phenomenon. But then I said the same thing. I believe that she is sincere, and she's certainly talking truth to power. But behind her was a whole manipulation, because when asked questions where she wasn't prepared, where there wasn't a training session, she had no answers. It's just normal kind of non-attached 16-year-old at that time. And so the whole world heard about her. She was like person of the year. But then you look, did anything actually change because of all her admonitions and don't eat this and don't do that? And no, nothing changed at all. She became famous, probably wealthy, but the world didn't change. And Bill Maher is comparing a person who has 5 times more people, over 220 million people following her, one of the Jenner sisters, versus Greta Thunberg. And they're just into materialism. Like, she has a closet with over 1,000 pairs of shoes. And she flies on one of the biggest private jets in America. Even to go a short distance would only take, under a half hour to drive. She flies her plane. That's obscene amount of pollution that she's causing by her lifestyle. But there are millions, hundreds of millions who like that. These are young people, the very people who said, yeah, Greta, we believe, in you. No, you don't. You don't believe in anything except yourself, whatever you're told to be fashionable and buy, none of which helps the environment. And later in the program, I'll show that clip, but not right now. The point I'm making is this. Historically, as you got older, you passed down your knowledge, your wisdom of how to deal with crisis in the family, the community, in your country. And people paid attention. There was a sense of unity. People didn't stop you because of your ethnicity or age or your beliefs, your culture. And that's how we became a great nation from about 1940 to about 2000, let's say 1978, 79. So we had a long run where the middle class thrived. We grew, we challenged, we took discrimination, we took women's rights, we took all these important issues that needed to be addressed, and we addressed them, not to perfection. My goodness, compared to where we were 50 years before that, a tremendous leap. And it was always the younger generation. I remember growing up. I remember my uncle, my great uncle, who was kind of like the head of our family, who told us this is what you should be doing with your community. This is what you should do with your family. And this was part of our character, to know that we would be following many of the principles of morality, ethics, manners, being honest, even if it cost us. Not today. So here's where this study takes us. A person may be 75, 85, 95 and older, but they still crave independence. This is interesting. People aged 95 and over still want to be a part of society and enjoy a level of independence, despite having a more limited interaction with the world. That's a real turnaround. The research by a team at the universities of York and Newcastle looked at the lives of people from Newcastle as part of a 10-year follow-up study in people 85 and older. So they were 85 at the beginning of the study, 95 at the end. And it was an observational study spanning decades. And it actually started with people born in 1921. Different world then, right? This is published in the peer-reviewed journal PLOS One. The study found that there were 5 key elements to sustain a positive attitude to life post-95. The most important being a sense of independence, even if that meant reframing what independence is to them. Other areas include the ability to reflect on past successes, being in control of when they need help from family, being outwardly presentable, maintaining a sense of health, and normalizing the impact of ill health. They said that they found that the participants in the study saw themselves as content with their lives, despite their world becoming smaller and in poor health sometimes, and with a lot of challenges. They were able to find pleasure in the smaller things of daily routines and events. So being independent came through strongly as a way of explaining their continued passion for life, and was strongly equated to feelings of dignity and youth. That's important. Now, in this clip you're going to see later from Bill Maher, he says that the younger generation, the millennials and Z generation, say, get out of the way, baby boomers, you've screwed up the world. In many ways, we did screw up the world. In many ways, some of us saw this and challenged it. The me generation, we challenged. I remember once back in 1970, I had dinner, and there was Dr. Martin Shepard, there was Dr. Elaine Kahn, Dr. Alan Putterman, Dr. Carmi Harari, Dr. Donald Mullen. These were all psychiatrists or psychologists. They were personal friends of mine. And we talked about how we were on the minimal side, the losing side of having our generation, because we were all about the same age, having our generation be responsible for maintaining a social cohesiveness, the acceptance of people, the acceptance of ideas, the breaking down walls that have been there for a long time in certain areas of our life, to honor people, not to look at the color of their skin, not to look at their gender, not to look at their income or education, but rather look at them as special spiritual human beings. And but we all agreed it wasn't going to happen. And it didn't happen. It took a long time. And then pieces of our society, individuals, as they began their growth through life and starting to see as they transition from being closed maybe to a little more open to very open, then we started to see the evolution of the more progressive minds who understood what life was and then to engage it. I share this with you because we baby boomers and people are older. My friends, I've got two real older friends. They're 85 each. They've been my friends, one since the first day I arrived in New York City. That's how long we've been friends. And they all agree that they are even busier now dealing with social issues than at any time in their life, because the young people have not stood up, stepped out, and found ideas and ways of making positive changes. They're just consumers, and they've dumbed down. And it's hard. One of my friends is a great intellect. I mean, just a brilliant man. And he says he can't have conversation with younger people because they have no experience. They haven't traveled the world except on the internet. And they haven't engaged in life in ways that his generation, the greatest generation, and others had to grow up. Today many people are protected, even in ways that we wouldn't appreciate. Like someone that I counseled recently, who is 29, going through a crisis emotionally, and is staying with his parents, has been staying with the parents, because there's, quote, no jobs. I said, well, there are no jobs or no jobs you want to take. He said, well, I don't find the jobs I want to take. What do you want in a job? Well, I was fired from the last 3 jobs. Why? Well, because I didn't come in on time. What time did you arrive? Sometimes 10, sometimes 11, sometimes noon. What time are you supposed to be there? 8 o'clock. Why would you expect to keep that job if you're never there on time? Well, my generation, and then he gets into how we stay up late at night and we communicate, and that's when we do a lot of our work. And there were other things. And I said, so your mom and dad, they're still working? Yes. Are they struggling? Yes. Are you helping? Well, how can I help them? Well, couldn't you go out and get some work and then chip in? Or is your mom still cleaning your room, going out and buying food, cooking you dinner, cleaning up afterwards? And he said, well, he says, again, our generation grew up differently than yours. I see. So No one expects anything from you. Nothing. You just sit in front of your computer all day and that's your world. He said that's tens of millions of our world. Now, mind you, this is a person that has a master's degree, but can't find work. Yeah, he can find work. So needless to say, let me explain this now. My generation, your generation, have to stay focused and have to stay tuned and have to stay involved because the younger generation is not going to solve the problems that we're faced with. Some are great. Some come from great parents who've motivated them, proper discipline, and got them focused, and they're there to help. And we appreciate that. But we cannot step away, retire, go to a gated community, watch television, play golf, play tennis, and hang out and have martinis in the afternoon. That's not our life. Just sharing. I'd like to hear what you think on that. Do you think that there's a time in life where you just say, I'm retired and I don't need to do anything more for anyone. It's just myself. Or do you believe that you should stay focused? In fact, even more so because now you have more time to educate yourself about issues that impact you and the world. I mean, just think of it this way. This is amazing. People get this idea that if something's not happening to them today, it's not their responsibility to focus on it. It's of little or no interest. Boy, that can change. In the next 2 days, 3 days, we're going to have a once in 100 to a once in 500 year weather experience. Every single state is going to be adversely affected. In the Northwest, in the Central America, in the Plain States, from Wyoming and Montana and South Dakota, North Dakota, from Wisconsin and northern Indiana and northern Michigan, you could see days where the temperature goes from 20 to 60 degrees below zero, with winds that could, according to the latest report just this morning that I review, could be a Category 3 hurricane in wind. So sometimes it's not just the cold, it is the wind chill that will kill animals and people. It was last year when we had that big freeze in the Southwest, in Colorado, Wyoming. Temperature dropped from in the 60s and the 70s in the daytime, clear down to the 20s. There was a 50-degree drop. Thousands of cows and horses and other animals froze to death. Why? Because the ranchers didn't build run-in sheds and get them in. But yes, they didn't. I can't explain why they didn't. I can't assume motive. I can just tell you the results. So how many run-in sheds have there been built to protect the millions of livestock we have? Few. That means you're going to see a massive amount of dead animals, unlike anything we've ever seen in American history. Will they learn a lesson? I'll bet they learn nothing because we choose to learn nothing. Now, when I said prepare yourself, stock up, your house for a fire, for a hurricane, for electromagnetic pulse storm, for any eventuality, probably around 10 million Americans have done that, and good for them. But the majority, no, because, well, they still had food last night downstairs. But what now is going to happen when you're not going to be able to go out and buy anything? It's not going to be on the shelves because they're going to be sold out. And now we got one of the coldest days coming on Christmas Day. Think of that. And how few people are prepared. This is the world we live in. So if we're not prepared because we didn't have it happen to us before, let me take you down here and drive you between Fort Myers and Bonita Springs in Naples, Florida, which is the end. You can't go any further. There's no houses allowed from the end of Naples down to the Keys. Let me show you thousands upon thousands of homes that are destroyed. Not only destroyed, but the insurance that nobody looked at doesn't cover the water damage. And now that their houses have been completely destroyed, they're being bulldozed, the owners didn't get any compensation, but now the town has changed a year ago, changed the zoning. So you have to have a certain size lot in order to rebuild. And these people have small lots. So now they can't rebuild. They've lost everything. Did they have to lose everything? No. Could they have moved to a more environmentally safe location? Of course they could, but they won't, and not now. I don't care if 10 million people tomorrow lost their homes on the ocean. You're not going to see the state relocate people. You're not going to see people wanting to relocate. So the question is why? Why, no matter what historically has happened from Vietnam to Libya, why is it we never, and I mean never, learn a lesson from anything from our history or our own personal calamities? And, oh, our house got torn down by a tornado. We live in Tornado Alley down here in Brownsville, Texas. We'll rebuild. Why not move? Well, no, we'll rebuild. You lost everything. Do you have a trailer? No. Do you have a basement that is concrete that could withstand? No. So you're just going to rebuild. Yes. What does that tell you? Now extend that. If a person's not willing to be responsible about their own lives and safety, do you think that same person is going to stop buying something that's going to pollute the world? Do you think they're going to change their diet to lessen methane gas and animal production? Do you think they're going to vote for the right person? Do you think they're even going to know anything about their voting record of the person they're voting for? Do you think they care about where the money is spent and how much is spent? No, but they'll care about the inflation that comes from the recession. And so now we got more people out of work, but we're told the wrong figures. Oh, we're the lowest unemployment rate. No, that's simply because you stopped counting people who couldn't find a job. That's over 100 million Americans. The real honest unemployment figure is closer to 24%. But if you can't find a job and you're no longer on unemployment, you don't exist. I see. Everything we live with today is something else other than what we're told. I just want to share that with you because getting back to the point, isn't it important for a person, no matter what their age, to stay involved, to stay aware, to do the best they can for themselves, and if they can contribute something to their society, that independence of thought, the independence of being able to be responsible, take care of yourself. Compare a man at 95 who's got some illnesses, still trying to maintain a sense of independence, still trying to find happiness in small things, even as that world shrinks and they're no longer considered relevant. And compare that to millions and millions of young people who are staying at home and not contributing. And you can't bring the subject up because their emotions are so hypersensitive, it triggers some form of reaction. Wow. We're the first generation in American history who've chosen not to learn anything from our elders. Back in a moment. Please stay with us.
Are you tired of closed-minded programming? Well, look no further than PRN.Live, the home for progressive voices.